Now, I'm not saying that Yiruma straight up stole this from Beethoven, but I'm not saying that. This might also be part of his genius. Using a technique from one of the most famous classical songs of all time, is this really a classical song, or is it actually a pop song in disguise? There have been very few piano songs in this century that have become as famous as Yiruma's River Flows in You. Yiruma found the perfect mix between complexity and simplicity to make a four-chord song into a masterpiece. This song really does ebb and flow just like a river. So what makes River Flows in You so genius? It starts with the melody. The melody tells the story. These notes are so simple, yet they are the foundation that this song is built on. Do you recognize what other popular song starts off this exact same way? Take a listen to River Flows in You. But I don't know, what if I start like this? Very similar. Now, I'm not saying that Yiruma straight up stole this from Beethoven, but I'm not saying that. Perhaps he was influenced or inspired by it? Absolutely. This might also be part of his genius. Using a technique from one of the most famous classical songs of all time, it's said that Pablo Picasso said, "Good artists borrow and great artists steal." And you know what? I couldn't agree more. Yiruma creates this sense of tension and longing by this minor second interval, that's A to G sharp. And then he eventually kind of splits it up and goes down to that D. Now notice how after this melodic theme is established, there's a space, a breath, and listen to the space between the notes, because less is always more with Yiruma's songs, and River Flows in You is no exception. The empty space becomes just as important as the notes themselves. Notice how the melody is played very freely at the start. This is on purpose. It almost feels as though there's a sense of holding back at the very start. If you were to tell a story based on this part of the song, you might say it relates to the first timid and nervous feelings of falling in love with someone. As the melody begins to progress though, it gains more confidence and movement with the use of short scales, arpeggios, and more intense rhythms. And these techniques are what allow Yiruma to build the intensity and excitement of a new romance. But the magic of this is that it always comes back to the original theme from the very beginning of the piece. So while this melody is extremely beautiful in and of itself, we also need to look at the chord progression. And it begs the question, is this really a classical song, or is it actually a pop song in disguise? And I would argue that it has the appeal of pop music colored by the influences of classical music. And some might call it New Age classical. So let's look at this chord progression together. All right, so this song has four chords: F sharp minor, D, A, and E. And this is called our 6-4-1-5 progression that's used in a ton of songs. This is one of the most popular progressions in contemporary music that we hear on the radio every single day. The beautiful thing about this chord progression, though, is that it defies genres. This new approach to classical music has captivated piano players worldwide, and a similar style can be found listening to compositions of Einaudi. Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into this melody. What's actually going on here? So over the first chord, F sharp minor, the first note that he's targeting is an A on beat 1. We have a little pickup note, and on beat 1, he has A, right? Second time, it's A again. Third time, A again. Surprise, surprise. Little fill. And the third time, it's G sharp. So if I look at the target notes that he's actually hitting, it's A, and G sharp. And that's also how the whole song begins. So he's really growing this theme with the A and that G sharp and that tension and making it sound so, so beautiful with all his flourishes and everything he manages to do. So if you're wanting to take the song to the next level and actually learn how to play it on the piano, we do have the sheet music for this on our Pianote members area where you can take it, you can slow it down, loop certain sections, and learn the whole thing. Click the link below this video for your free trial. So he does add a couple rhythmic variations just to keep things interesting. So he might go like this the first time, and then the next time he might go, then he might add another little fill. And he just loves to play around with these parts, and not to mention it makes playing it on the piano super fun. Okay, so now that we can follow along with Yiruma's chord progression and his melody, we now get to add what I call the secret sauce, Yiruma's signature arpeggios. So this pattern is repeated throughout the entire song with slight variations in the left hand. Yiruma provides us with variations in his left hand to give his arpeggios a little bit more life. He has a simple arpeggio and then a more advanced arpeggio for every chord. So let me show you what he's doing. Okay, let's look at F sharp minor. So he's starting off with F sharp, C sharp, and F sharp. And this is a relatively simple arpeggio because you're just hitting the root, the fifth, and the root. Now, when it gets a little bit more interesting, he adds that low F sharp again, just to add that fourth note. And when he's getting really intense in the song, he'll go lower and add F sharp octaves. And so he has a different type of F sharp arpeggio that he can hit depending on how intense the song is in the moment. For the D chord, this is my favorite one that he does. He hits a D, A, and an E note. And he could have just as easily kept the same formula going D, A, D. But listen to that versus this. It just opens up the chord just a little bit more. I love this technique for your left hand. The A chord, A, E, and C sharp. So what's he doing here? He's hitting the root, the fifth, and then going up the third. So far he's done a slightly different arpeggio for each one of these chords. And for the E chord, he does a combination of a couple. He does E, B, and E, but then he also does this E, B, and G sharp. And if we looked at the formula, it's the same thing. It's root, fifth, and third. So if we looked at the A arpeggio, take a look at this one. A, E, C sharp. That was root, fifth, third. And if I look at the E, E, B, G sharp, same thing, but over an E chord. I just can't help but notice that this E arpeggio is very similar to this one, which you might recognize if you're a classical pianist, but if you don't. E, targeting the third, same thing, Fior Elise pops up again in our left hand and in our right hand. And again, I'm not saying that he, thought about this when he was composing it. It's just his influences are coming out through his music. So two things I've noticed about his arpeggios are that he knows when to simplify the left hand to create that space and that emotion, but he also knows when to add the driving rhythm in the left hand while making it sound so beautiful. This song really does ebb and flow just like a river. When it's calm, we hear these simple left-hand arpeggios, really light. But when the river begins to rush a little bit more and get more complex, our left hand does the same thing. So what made this song so popular? In my professional opinion, it's all about the repetition. That A and G sharp, he keeps going at it from the intro to the fast parts. A, G sharp. It's the same thing as Fior Elise, right? He does a masterful job of blending his classical piano techniques and popular music harmony to create a beautiful theme that is just as fun to play as it is to listen to. And you mix that with the fact that it's simple enough for a late beginner piano player to learn, and voila, a masterpiece is born. Yiruma found the perfect mix between complexity and simplicity to make a four-chord song into a masterpiece. So let me know, is this more of a pop song or a classical song in your opinion? I'd love to know what you think. Remember to hit like and subscribe for more videos like this, and we'll see you next time.